Welcome to the Mission Field Media Podcast. My name is Brandon Hartine, and I use media to tell the stories of ministries and missionaries that are having an impact for the kingdom of God all around the world. This episode is sponsored by Club 1040. You can check out all the amazing things they're doing, like planting churches, planting Bible schools, raising up leaders in the Middle East, all kinds of amazing stuff by going to their website, club1040.com. I highly recommend it. So don't forget to subscribe to the Mission Field Media Podcast and find us on all the popular social media apps like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and you can watch video of all these interviews on our YouTube channel. In today's podcast, we're talking to missionary Justin Overton. His wife and he are campus missionaries on the University of Arkansas. So we want to find out what that looks like, some of the cool God stories from that ministry. They've also done missions in several different countries in different parts of the world. And so we'll hear some of those stories, as well as an amazing testimony of God's faithfulness through one of the hardest times in their lives. So let's just jump right into this podcast as Justin joins me here in the Mission Field Media Studio. Okay, we're joined here today with missionary Justin Overton, and you're a missionary to the University of Arkansas, right?
Yep, correct. Yeah.
So what does that look like? Because most people are thinking missionaries other places.
Sure.
So how does that work with what you're doing?
Yeah, so it works very similar to even world missions, but it's just right here. And so what my wife Jordan and I, we go to work every day at the university, and what we tell people to kind of explain it is that we are the evangelistic arm of the church. Mm-hmm. And so if the church were to have a ministry that would reach the university, we would hope that it would be what we do, which is called Chi Alpha. And so our main focus to reach students is through small groups, small group discipleship, one-on-one discipleship. And then, of course, we do our weekly, corporate worship gatherings and services and outreaches and events and activities and trips and stuff like that. And so looks a lot, a lot like a small church. But it's something outside of that, And so, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. I would say that the vast majority of our time is spent doing one-on-one discipleship and small group discipleship. That's where we see the most growth and health there. And so, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So what made you decide, I guess, to focus on university outreach versus international or something else?
Yeah. So. Honestly, I got involved as a student. When I was a university student, I got involved with Chi Alpha and fell in love with it early on, and was just like, this is awesome. This would be really cool to have a job and do this, But I just knew, honestly, because I was called to ministry when I was 16, but I knew that I was called to be a youth pastor. Mm-hmm. So this would be really cool, but I'm not going to do that,
Yeah.
And so, fast forward a couple years, and I'm getting close to graduation. And honestly, there's nothing as far as spiritual direction or even, opportunities out there for me in ministry at this time, And so I'm just kind of getting a little frustrated and a little antsy. And so I'm just asking the Lord, I'm just like, God, I know you've called me, but I need to know where.
Yeah.
I need to know, I'm getting close to graduating, and I need to know, what's the next step? What do I need to be working towards? What do I need to be preparing for?
I think it's a familiar struggle for people.
Absolutely.
I'm willing, God. I'll do whatever. I'll go wherever. Just tell me. Make it obvious.
Exactly.
I'm kind of dumb.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really funny that you even say that, because that's almost like how the Lord responded. Mm-hmm. I was praying, I was frustrated, and I was just like, God, what's next? And I could feel the Lord, I've heard the Lord speak several times, but 2 times in my life that I'm I've heard him so clear, and this was one of them. And he just said, I've been doing it this whole time, and you've never noticed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you're going to need to be more specific,
Yeah.
Because even at this point, I'm like, what? And he didn't say anything, but he started literally bringing up memories that I hadn't thought about in years of how he directed my path to be involved with this ministry of Chi Alpha. And so I just asked, I was like, okay, God, is this it? Like, you want me to do Chi Alpha? And it was almost as if I could really feel the Holy Spirit go,
finally, you get to
he got it. Yeah. Like, he got it, you know? And so I was like, okay, like that's perfect, because that's what I'm really loving at the moment, you know?
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with the heart behind the whole ministry, you know, like reaching the future leaders of the world, like the next president, doctors, lawyers, teachers, judges, you know, politicians. They're all currently at the university campus right now.
Yeah.
And so, like, what impact could we have in our world if we don't wait until those people get into positions of authority and power to try to impact them, but we impact them when their minds are so malleable, like we spoke about earlier, you know, like when they're ready to receive and ready to learn and open, you know, to that stuff. And so, like, if we can really introduce them to Jesus in those times, then when they go into those positions of authority, go into those positions of power, then we can really see world change, like true world change. And so that was probably what drew me. And honestly, like, just the impact that it had on me personally.
You're a living testimony.
Absolutely. I mean, I probably wouldn't be following the Lord if it wasn't for Chi Alpha. And I grew up a pastor's kid. But college was a rough time for me.
It's a lot of bad influence.
Yeah,
in college.
had a lot of temptation and a lot of struggles there, and it was my relationships within the ministry of Chi Alpha that kept me following the Lord.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got involved in Chi Alpha that I finally began having a daily prayer and Bible reading time with the Lord every day. It was that time, you know, because it was my peers encouraging me and pushing me. And so, like, I wanted to see, and I still want to see people like me, students like me come up, you know, that have grown up Christian, you know, but that relationship with the Lord hasn't really become real until they get involved in a community of believers and peers to where they're able to look around and go, man, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this for real, you know? And so, so that's kind of what drew me to the ministry, and the Lord opened the door. And so,
One of the cool things, I actually did a promo video for you guys a few years ago. And one of the kids we interviewed, Hayden.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want his name. No, we did Hayden.
Oh, Hayden.
We did several, but
yeah.
I just remember thinking, oh, he's just a little scrawny college kid, and you know, just I don't know, whatever you think of a college kid is, you know.
Yeah.
And now he's actually the youth pastor at our church, and just to see the transformation that's happened in his life, it's just amazing. Like, he's a different person, and in a good way. Hayden, in case you're watching this, but just I'm a solid believer in what you guys do as well, because I don't even have like the weekly experience, but I just from talking to you and watching you guys and seeing people like Hayden come out of these ministries and the effectiveness they have is just amazing. So I'm huge.
Oh man, Hayden's grown up so much. Just incredible man of God, and like he was great when he came in, you know. But to see the growth over just the time that he was in college, but then even beyond that, like the Lord has just grown up.
He is hardcore. He's
incredible.
awesome.
Incredible. Lord's been faithful.
Yeah, for sure. There's a term too. I've heard hanging out. I don't hang out often around Chi Alpha, but I've heard it around Chi Alpha people. But it's missions in reverse.
Yeah.
So explain that concept and kind of what you've seen.
So it's another reason. One of the 4 reasons we have Chi Alpha. I mentioned 2 of them. So one of them is future leaders. The other is protecting the investment of the church. So people like me. And then we have what we call missions in reverse. So this is students from all across the world that come to the university to study. And our heart is that we can hopefully introduce them to Jesus, you know, disciple them, train them, equip them to make other disciples, and then ultimately send them back home. That's our goal, is to send them back home to their home countries to become missionaries. And they don't have to raise a dime to do it. They don't have to learn a language. They don't have to learn a culture or anything like that. They can just go home and become the best missionaries. And that's what we see. Like, we see it all the time, where our students come through our ministry, you know, get trained up in how, because that's our big passion of ours is training students how to make other disciples, training disciples to make disciples, you know, the Great Commission. And so seeing students go to their home countries and then making disciples, man, we've seen families come to know the Lord. We've seen churches started. We've seen communities saved. And there are some major influential people across the world that have come through Chi Alpha that are leading others to Jesus because of it. And what's great is a large majority of the students, we have over 120 nations represented at the University of Arkansas.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And
it's like half of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a large majority of those nations that are represented come from the 1040 window.
Wow.
And if you haven't heard of the 1040 window, you know that it's over 80%. Yeah.
It's basically this stretch right here.
Yeah.
Between 10 and 40, I forget what the lines
longitude,
are.
latitude, whatever, yeah. But it's like over 80% or more of the world's unreached people groups.
Never heard of Jesus.
Never heard of Jesus live in that little window, and like less than 2 or 3% of our missions funding and missionaries go there, not because we don't want to, but because you can't send missionaries there hardly because they get murdered, you know? And so what's really great is we have students from the 1040 window coming to us, and it's absolutely legal in our country to share the gospel and to talk about Jesus and to talk about religion. And so we're able to introduce them to Jesus when they're here and then send them home, and they can do missions work. Yeah. You know, when they get home, and we don't have to send a missionary there, we just send a student home. Yeah.
And that's what's cool about using a local anyway. Like even international missions, like the biggest goal should be, it's not always the case, but should be, raise up locals. Yeah. Because if you want something to live past you, you're going to die or you're going to go home at some point. One of the two. Yep. Your time is limited. All of our time is limited. So the only way to make that everlasting thing is to raise up locals so they can pass on. They can, like disciples, making disciples. Yeah. And so it's so cool you get to directly do that versus sending somebody in. It takes time to build relationships. It takes money, a lot of money to go to these places. And like you said, there's danger in certain areas. And even I just brought a memory to my mind. I was in a country, we'll just say in the past because I don't want to say how long ago. Sure. But we were boxing up Bibles to be shipped to other nearby countries where it's illegal. And so obviously that's a legal process. Yeah. But I was just thinking about owning a Bible and just how it's looked at differently because it's such easy access here, you know. It's so open and free, and it just they're on every tabletop pretty much in Northwest Arkansas. But then you go there and you're like, wow, this is like you're in the process of doing something, or my friend, well, whatever, let's say, is in the process of doing something that's illegal because it's so powerful to the system and to the elements of darkness that are in place over there. Yeah. And it can get you killed. Yeah, absolutely. And my whole thought process coming back after seeing this in person is like the Bible and the words and the message there are no less powerful here. That's right. It just blows my mind because it's like how we treat them. Try to do it without crying. Yeah. But it is amazing that, like you said, it's so easy here to have that opportunity so freely. Yeah. And then like you're in a place like that, it is like a constant, not a burden, I guess, but it's almost like a cloud. Like you got to be very careful. Yeah. Every little step and word and thing you do and put on social media. Yeah. Yeah. Or not at all, obviously, some things. But it's just such a great opportunity to do that here freely. Yeah. And just the spot, like you said, just the university and so many people. I walked through that little hallway with all the flags. And just like, golly, there's so many countries. That's so fun. Yeah. Such an opportunity to do that. Let me try to think. So speaking of, another thing you reminded me, you were talking about just asking God like what to do, and then him saying, I've already been training you. So like with what I do with media missions, so I did missions in high school. That was kind of my first like international missions trip. I went to Romania and Hungary and did some stuff, and it was just like, whoa, this blew my mind. Yeah. I was like, what is happening? Yeah. It's so crazy and cool and fun, and like, I don't know, just so different. Yeah. And so immediately attracted to that, and like just gets in your blood. Just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this is so fun and cool, and
Yep.
what an adventure. And but I'm not like a typical preacher or church planner or like all these typical things. So just like I don't know where I fit in. Like I don't know
Yeah.
what I could actually do that's worth someone sending me. But then I end up, past high school and all that, I end up working for the TV news.
Yeah.
And then after a few years of that, got invited to somebody, a retiring missionary invited me and said, hey, can you come to Belize? Is actually where I got my first media mission trip. And can you come do what you do here for the news? Come do that for me. Like I'm starting to work down here and doing all this. And I was like, sure, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
And so I went down there and then met another missionary, and like they were starting to build a campground there, and they were like, oh, can we do this video at the campground? I was like, let's tell the story, it's not just a building, like there's a story here,
Yeah.
And so we just told that story, and they started using that video and just spreading like wildfire, like just the people can attach to a story. I think that's why Jesus told so many stories, parables.
Absolutely.
But he knew people were like, oh, I can understand, like I get it.
Yeah.
And they just started raising funds like crazy, like immediately using that video, and it was just like a light bulb went off in my head, and it's like God's like,
wow,
yeah, like I know I didn't finish college, but God was like, I used you for 4 years every day doing that in the news, like that was my college,
Wow.
It's like 4 years every day training you how to interview people and put together stories and find stories. So it's that same kind of thing. Like I've already been training you. You just didn't know it. You thought you were working a job and just trying to have fun. But when that opportunity to mix with missions came in, I was like,
this is it.
This is it. This is why. Okay. All right, cool.
Isn't that cool how the Lord works?
It is.
So
It's
funny.
really cool. And that's just what I preach to people too. And I say preach very mildly. My motto, I guess I should say to people is just like God created you with these desires in your heart. Like we all have different ones and different talents and things we want to do, but there's a reason. Like find how you can get in where you can fit in, as people say. There's a church that the ladies group sews stuffed animals, and they just want to give it to the people that lose their houses, or they've sent stuff with me up to several different countries, and I've been able to give those to kids that like have nothing. And just say, God loves you. There's a church in Arkansas, little old ladies that just want to love you and say Jesus loves you, and they're thinking about you and praying about you, and that's a ministry opportunity. Because they love doing that.
Absolutely.
And so they found a place to get in where they fit in.
Yeah.
And
that stuff
doesn't
go beyond the sight of the Lord.
No.
Like that stuff, he sees it, even when maybe it feels insignificant. Like I'm, sewing a stuffed animal. To some people, be like, well, what is that really helping? But the Lord knows exactly what kid or what person's going to get that one.
Yeah.
And he knows exactly what they're going to need in that moment. And so, like, I think that's so great how the Lord uses everything.
Yeah. We just everybody needs to train ourselves to step back and think, like take not notes, but like take notice, I guess, of what desires I have, what skills do I have, and am I using it?
Yeah.
That's my big challenge. Is we can all say like, oh well, our church supports whatever. Well, no. Let's not talk about that. What's your personal way to help people? What's your personal way to do something?
Yeah.
And if the answer is like, I'm not really doing anything for anybody else, maybe this is your wake up call.
Yeah.
Hello. Get involved. Some people
thought you were getting to talk about missionaries, but you're getting to talk about you doing missions.
You are, yeah, because honestly, that's what this whole podcast is even about, is inspiring people to get involved, do something yourself, because God created you. That's why you created. You want to know people are going around unfulfilled?
Yeah.
Find a way to get fulfilled.
That's right.
Whatever you're created and be put into that use.
Yeah.
That's very fulfilling.
And that's scripture.
Yeah.
That's what the word meant when it's like, delight in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. And honestly, like when I was younger and really immature, I was
mansions,
thinking, I was like,
cars.
I'm going to get everything I want, But I was passing right over the first part. That's like when you take delight in the Lord. Yeah. When He's your focus, when He's your desire, when He's what brings you joy, when being with Him, spending time with Him, serving Him. Yeah. When all of that is your focus, then what happens is God allows you to do the things that you already love.
Yeah.
You know, because what happens is your desires start to just come in line with His. And so then you and the Lord want the same thing.
Yeah.
And so you get to do the fun stuff.
Right.
But you're doing it for Him. You
Right.
know? So you get to travel the world.
Yeah. I love traveling.
But you're doing it for Him.
Yeah.
And so like that's absolutely, I think that's what the word meant.
Yeah.
You know.
Another scripture: seek first the kingdom of God, then
He'll give you all the desire. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah,
all that will be added. Yep.
So what? I know I do more international. I do some local as well. You also had the opportunity to work internationally.
Yeah.
So where have you gone, and what have you done in those places?
So my first international trip was to Bolivia. That was I just went as an attendee, kind of like you, like when I was in high school, one of my first mission trip. That was my first time ever leaving the country.
What was that like? Like you step off the plane and what was your first thought?
It was rough.
That's high altitude, right?
Yeah,
that's,
we went to La Paz.
Yeah, somewhere.
So it's over here. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, South America. Right here.
So we were in La Paz, and I want to say it's like it's over 10,000 feet in elevation.
Yeah.
And so so just the elevation alone was a lot, but like culture shock, man, just it was tough. It's because I'd never been, anywhere.
Yeah,
anywhere
but the state. You're complete.
I go to this
frame of reference
city,
is America.
Yeah, so I go to this city that La Paz at that time had like 2 million people, in the city, and then it's basically connected to this other city that's called El Alto, and they're all one and the same, and it has another like million or million and a half, and so like I'm in a city of 3.5 million people,
Which is the population of all of Arkansas, or half Arkansas.
Yes.
Yeah, in
and
one
I'm
city.
just like about to get run over on the roads,
Yeah.
And a 2-lane road is a 4-lane road, sometimes 5, and the food was a big culture shock and all that stuff, and so it was a big shock for me, but it was enough, kind of like you said, it was enough to make me go, man, I got to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so so that was my first trip, just like I said, just going and being a part of a team. And
when you got back from that trip, did you have any thoughts, or did anything hit you different?
Yeah, just definitely just feeling massively humbled. Felt honestly ashamed, of the thoughts that I had, the feelings that I had. Very ungrateful for the Lord's blessing, and seeing how people, and I mean I'm in this massive city, so it's still skyscrapers and stuff, but it's not like here, and so it definitely changed my worldview, and my perspective, and so I got the itch to go, at that point, and so then when I came into Chi Alpha as a leader, started working in Chi Alpha. As a missionary, the first opportunity that we got to go and lead a trip, I met some missionaries in Belize. Nice. And I was like, I got to go, I got to go. And so we took a team to Belize, and we went 2 years, I think. It's we went multiple times in between, and so I kind of forget how many years we went. And so we went at least 2 years, possibly 3. And went there to launch campus ministry. We were working with Tommy and Jane Carpenter at the time when they were there in Belize still, and worked with them and got to meet Derek and Valentine Pitts.
Yep, doing awesome stuff
worked
down
along
there.
with them.
So.
Oh man, they're still just killing it. I don't know that I've ever met anybody that loves their people as much as Derek and Valentine. Man, I mean they are so passionate about seeing Belize come to Jesus.
Yeah, it's so easy to come alongside people like that.
Oh man,
too,
yeah. And the dude works like a madman, And so it's like, hey, can we help? And he's like, yep, I got a list of 400 things that I can just put you to work, And so
wow,
yeah. So like we did a lot. We were on the campus of the University of Belize and St. John's, which is actually a Catholic campus, which we honestly didn't know if it was even going to be possible to do campus ministry there, But in one of the pre-trips, we shared with Derek and Valentine that we want to start campus ministry, all that, and they said, well, St. John's is the biggest here in Belize City, and then you have University of Belize, and so we're like, well, let's go to both, and so we went, and University of Belize, we had some open doors, and we expected larger open doors there than at St. John's, but at St. John's, and they are Jesuit, so like devout Catholic, very, very, Catholic. But man, we were just amazed at how the Lord had gone before us and just flung open the doors, and they were like, absolutely, come in, do whatever you want to do. Like basically, they gave us the keys to the campus. Basically, they were like, just don't bother students when they're in class. They said, other than that, do whatever you want to do.
Wow.
And so that was
with the Lord
directing
your footsteps pretty
absolutely.
Easy there,
And so like that was just in the pre-trip.
Yeah.
And then we get our team there. And so we're thinking we're going to do just university ministry, which was our goal, and we did that. But in the time that between our pre-trip and the actual trip with students, word had gotten to the high school, and it's St. John's High School. It's connected to the university. They're basically on the same campus. Word had gotten to them that we were coming. And there was a teacher there at the high school that was so in love with Jesus. And she contacted Derek, told them that they wanted us to come. And we got to go into, I think, 5th and 6th grade classes, all of them, for like a week or two straight, and teach discipleship.
Wow.
In their classroom. So like in place of class,
right.
They brought us in.
Wow.
And we stood before the class and taught them discipleship. And so because we do, and I say discipleship, we do discipleship by design. It's just a class that basically teaches you how to make disciples.
Yeah.
And so for 2 weeks, and there was too many classes, then we had people to teach. And so like people were teaching multiple classes, running back and forth, and teaching, and like it was full on. They were like, the only like restriction that the high school had was like, it had to be a class. And so we had to have a final, which is perfect because we already had that in place.
Yeah.
We do that even with our university students.
Yeah.
And so they had a class that they had to study, they had to learn, and they had to take a final. And it was great.
Like all that in the span of a week.
Yeah. And so like I think high school students, just because, or not high school, but the school students, we had I think 130 something students.
Wow.
Because through the classes that went through our discipleship training class. And then also through that time we were able to put I think about 14 or 15 university students through training to make disciples on their campus. And then coming back the next year, I'll never forget how excited I was to see that teacher again at the school. And she's like, you don't understand, this isn't even the same school. Oh. She said the whole school has changed. Because of all of these students that went through your training, they were like, they have taken it, and it's changed the whole culture of campus. The whole high school's changed. And she said it's not just isolated within these 2 grades that you talked to. It's all throughout. They're like, kids are praying on campus. They're praying for each other. They're discipling each other, and it was awesome.
Wow.
And very similar stories, on the university campus. Obviously, not to that extreme because we didn't have 115, 130, whatever it was, students that we put through the class. It was,
but those high schoolers become university
exactly,
and
so
else.
we've been able to maintain contact through with a lot of those students, mainly the university students, just simply because it's a little weird, Facebook in a 6th grade. And so
that one.
So but the university students, they've been doing really well. And the Lord really did some great things there. And so we were able to go to Belize, and then COVID, COVID shut everything down.
I'm glad that's over.
Oh, man,
that was such a mess.
And so since then, the Lord's kind of redirected. And this past year, in 2022, my wife and I, we took a team to Italy, to hopefully start university ministry there.
Awesome.
As well. And so just got back from that, like I said, last year. This year we were unable to go because my wife was having a baby. We got a 3-week-old at home now. And so instead of going on mission, we stayed home and took care of family.
That's a different kind of mission.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so, but it's incredible because in our short time in Italy, really the missionaries even told us coming in, they were like, you got to understand this year is the proving year. They said you have to more or less prove to the local churches, pastors,
to be able to come back and do it in the future.
Exactly. It's very vision casting. It's you want them to get on board. You want them to basically trust you, because honestly, in Central and South America, when you look very American, looking around,
yeah, you stand out.
People are drawn to you.
Yeah.
In Europe, on the other hand, it's you look very American, and people are, they want to get away from you.
Yeah. I always tell people America's most loved, most hated.
Exactly.
Either way, it's interesting.
Exactly.
But,
And so it was a definitely different experience, and the missionaries told us that coming in. They were like, you're going to have to more or less prove yourself. You're going to have to allow these people to see your hearts.
Yeah.
That you genuinely care about them, that you genuinely want to, love on them, not just fulfill your agenda.
Yeah.
And so we were able to do a lot of, campus ministry that we wanted to, but it was a lot of just proving ground. But man, God did such great things in that time, even without going back this summer. Italy is actually bringing a team here.
Wow.
They're going to be here in about 3 weeks.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So like university students that we connected with and discipled and stuff there, they are coming here.
Are they coming to see how Chi Alpha works?
Exactly.
And stuff,
They're going to be coming during our welcome weeks.
Oh, that's awesome.
So when we have 6,000 to 7,000 new freshmen
students
coming in,
wow,
these Italians are going to be able to come. And obviously, Chi Alpha here in the United States is not going to look like Chi Alpha in Italy. It's going to look different.
Yeah.
But it's going to give them a sense and an idea of this is kind of the mentality that we have to have when it comes to reaching these students of new students coming in. Let's go get them. Let's go tell them about the Lord.
missions looks different in different countries.
Oh, very.
Because there's different cultures and
That's right.
just different things that different works. And
Absolutely.
throwing the Americanized culture version of missions in every other country
It's just not going to work.
Doesn't work.
No,
at all.
No. And so, and then we've told the team that's coming here, just we're not expecting you to replicate anything you're seeing here.
But there's some commonalities.
Exactly.
People have sinned. We
That's
all
right.
need a savior.
That's right.
College is a very important time span in anyone's life, all over the world. Doesn't matter your culture.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of key things that still...
The gospel works in the whole world.
Yeah, exactly.
And discipleship, which was, I believe, Jesus' design to evangelize the world, also works across the whole world. Mm-hmm. And so, that's, like you said, those commonalities are going to continue. It's just, maybe some of the tactics
different approach,
are not going to work, because I don't know that, doing late night glow-in-the-dark capture the flag across campus is maybe going to work in Italy. I don't know.
Let's try it. We should at least try it once and see what they think.
So it's going to, I'm excited for this team to come, and they have invited us to come back. We'll be back next summer.
Awesome.
And the missionaries were just so excited. They were actually telling us, they were because they've been in Italy for 20-something years.
Wow.
And they said, in all the years that we've been here, you are the first team that has been invited back from our pastors.
Wow.
And so, which just blew our minds, but we've been officially invited back by the pastors and stuff, come and do missions work and stuff. And so we're excited about what the Lord's going to do in Italy.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of people people think third world country, I think, initially.
Yeah.
When you think missions.
Yeah.
You think, oh man. But I've been to places like Japan,
Yeah.
first world country, very hard to mission.
Oh man,
to spread the gospel and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
it's different, just so different challenges. And then Italy.
Yeah.
I actually worked with a missionary there, and they worked with, there's a big human trafficking issues.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere in the world, honestly.
Sure.
Let's be honest. It's not big enough. There's actually a movie out right now that's talking about it. It's the biggest story that nobody's talking about.
That's right.
and it still happens. Slavery still happens. All kinds of stuff. So these missionaries work with people, a lot of African countries and stuff. They end up going to Italy because it's kind of closest across the sea there. And they're told, like, we have this place for you in Italy. You can go and start a job and do hair or whatever, make money. There's so much more money and opportunity. And so, like, we'll pay for your way across. You just pay us back when you get there, kind of thing. And so they owe these people money, and they get across, and they say, well, you actually owe us 10 times what we paid you, and that's in your contract or whatever.
Yeah.
And so if you just did hair or something like that, you literally never pay it back. So you have a debt that has to be paid, and you end up working the streets, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of prostitution and things that, drugs and all kinds of hardcore things that get involved. And like, God, you don't think of that when you think of Italy.
Yeah.
It's all the nice, pretty stuff. And there's like this hardcore underworld of trafficked people that
Absolutely.
Their chains are invisible, but they're bound. The people are saying, like, I know where your aunt and uncle live. I know where your mom and dad live. If you don't pay us, we're gonna go visit them. So what are you gonna do to come up with that money? So it's a pretty hardcore. My trip was pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
But it's just funny how missions looks different in different countries.
It does, man. It does. It's it's I mean, the students especially that we came in contact with, especially if they're Italian, they all are Catholic.
Yeah.
Everybody. It's very similar to the South.
It's culturally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the South. Everyone here is Christian.
Yeah.
But in Italy, Italians, when you talk to them, they're like, yeah, of course I'm Catholic.
Yeah.
And then you ask, well, like, are you practicing? And they're like, well,
yeah.
And so sharing the gospel there, I think that's what drew me as far as the initial interest to go there, is just because not only like is they're the dark underworld of people literally bound, the country is bound in two things. One, it's a post-Christian culture. All Europe is very post-Christian, but they're also the ones that do identify as Catholic and all that stuff. They're so bound in religion.
Yeah.
So bound in religion. And so the missionaries were sharing like basically like what they do every day, and like most of what we do is just walk people out of the bondage of religion to let them truly understand grace.
All the boxes you got to check as
yes. And so I got super excited because that's who I was. I'm a Christian kid, PK. And so I was just checking the boxes, and it wasn't until I got in college and really challenged and realized, oh wow, like Jesus did everything for me. And so that's why I was so excited. And man, it was so fun to be able to have those conversations with those students and be able to like share what true grace.
Yeah, take that weight off.
And like you can almost see it physically come off of them. They're like, oh wait, I mean, you mean like I don't have to worry about this saint or pray to him or anything like that in order to be good. And like, man, like the things that you could see just come off of them, the weight come off of them in true freedom, it's just incredible to see them experience. And so,
it's so much work. Like all the,
oh man,
if you go to just checking boxes to try to prove you're good. And then in the end, your righteousness is filthy rags after all that. Like, really? You did all that work?
Well, and that's why it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And that's why they aren't practicing, because they're like, it's just
too
not hard.
All
so,
the time and energy. And
so I'm Catholic, but I mean, I just, it's too hard.
Culturally.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in different places as well.
There's some crazy stuff, man. Like, the Catholic Church there is very different from the Catholic Church here.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't have just a ton of, experience with the Catholic Church, but hearing stories and stuff from the missionaries and going to, certain churches, that each have, a saint, that they, really pray to and all that stuff. And I remember one specific church in Padova, which is the city that we mainly worked in, which is just like 30 minutes outside of Venice. The University of Padova that we worked at, which is actually, I think, like the second oldest university, like, in Europe.
And Europe is so much older than
yes,
the United States.
Yes.
You go to someone's house and it's older than the United States. Like
Absolutely.
house.
They were celebrating their 500th year.
Yeah.
And I was like, your university, or sorry, 800th year.
Yeah.
I'm like, your university is older than my country.
By a lot, yeah.
By a whole lot, But they were sharing about this one Catholic church there that I can't remember the saint's name, but he, according to their history and stuff, he was used a lot in the gift of healing, and so because of that, when he died, they sectioned off portions of his body. And so you can go and pray to, and it's under a glass thing, you can go and see it. You can pray to his shriveled up black tongue. It's disgusting,
Yeah.
But they can go and pray to this tongue because it was healing, because he would preach these messages on healing and stuff. And so you go and pray to, and you can see it. I wanted to see it so bad, but we didn't get to go in and see it.
Oh, man.
But yeah, the missionary was like, yeah, it's literally there, a little black shriveled up tongue, And I'm like,
people putting their faith in that stuff.
yeah, just praying to a tongue, praying to a man's tongue,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just, it's different, very different.
That's why it's so important just to always, it's not about me. Anybody that's building, it's even with this podcast, I hate even that I have to be in it. Yeah. It's not about me. I don't care about me. It's about the story. It's about redirecting people to God and the awesome stories and things He's done, you know, through people.
And that's what we were even talking about. I was telling my wife, I was like, it honestly kind of makes me sad, because I almost bet that patron saint, if he knew what they were doing, he'd probably roll over in his grave and be like, "You're praying to my tongue? Come on,
It wasn't my tongue,
because I'm sure he was a great guy, and probably did great things for the Lord, But to see how they've idolized him and stuff is just sad, the bondage that they're in.
That's how easily too, over time, if you don't pass down that to the next generation, the knowledge and the wisdom, and which again goes back to what you're doing, meeting people at a university level and catching them and giving them this knowledge to live their life and pass down and affect other people, so you don't wind up praying to a tongue.
Absolutely.
All right, you ready to cry a little bit?
Oh dear, sure. Yeah.
So I wanted to give you the space to tell your testimony of your kids and just walk us through kind of that time in your life and what happened. And I don't want to ask too many questions up front, but basically, you and your wife got pregnant with your first child.
Yeah.
Very exciting time.
And honestly, that was a story in and of itself.
Tell it. This is your time.
Yeah, sure. My wife and I were married 2 years, and about 2 seconds into our marriage, my wife was ready to have kids. I was not. I was like,
wait just a little bit.
Let's wait a little bit. Yeah. So I wanted 5. She wanted none. As far as time to wait, and so we compromised. We got 2.
Nice.
And so after 2 years, we began trying to have a baby. And after a year, we weren't pregnant. And honestly, we weren't concerned.
Yeah. It's whenever it happens.
Yeah, we were like, let's just not stress it. When it happens, it happens. No worries. But my wife went to the doctor just for a normal checkup, And the doctor's like, you should be pregnant. If you're actively trying, you should be pregnant. And so she's like, you guys need to go and get tested. And so then honestly, almost 9 to 10 months of testing, both of us getting tested and doing all kinds of doctor's appointments and stuff like that.
It's exhausting.
Exhausting. And because at this point, before then, no stress.
Yeah.
Now it's like you got to go get tested. Oh, wait, whoa, something's wrong with me,
Right.
And so after, 9 to 10 months of testing, it was confirmed that we would be unable to conceive on our own. And so, which was devastating.
Mm-hmm.
and they told us that our only option was to do in vitro fertilization. Well, that comes with a $40,000 to $50,000 price tag,
Yeah.
and so it was not an option for us,
Missionaries aren't rich? Or?
Yeah, what?
You're not
This
rich?
is
I'm
news,
rich.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we were just like, okay, well, that's just not an option, And so we were sitting at home the night after we found out, both crying, upset, And finally we got to talking, and I was just like, are we upset because this is our only option and we can't afford it? Or are we upset because this is our only option? And we come to find out, like, obviously we were a little disappointed,
Yeah, you just want things to smoothly go through life.
But really our biggest thing was that this was our only option and we couldn't possibly afford it, so it would never happen.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, okay, let's do this. Let's just go and talk to insurance, see what they do. And the doctors had already told us, insurance, you get lucky if they cover 10%.
Yeah.
And so we were like, let's just see what they'll do. And so we had already been on the phone a lot with them the past few months just because of all the testing and stuff. And it was a headache. And so I told her, I was like, I'm not going to call. I'm going to an office. I'm going to talk to a human,
Yeah.
So we go to the office, and we're just blown away when the insurance agent looked over the desk and said, we cover 100%. We were like,
what?
And I was like, he's not understanding what we're asking him.
Yeah. Clearly things we're talking about something else.
I was like,
it's not knee surgery, right?
Yeah, 100%. He goes, yeah, 100%. And I was like, okay, but what about the medicine? I heard that's the most. Yeah, we cover 100%. I was like, this is insane. You know, like this, and
insurance doesn't cover 100% of anything.
They just don't do that, right? And so honestly, that was just confirmation to us that the Lord was in this.
Yeah.
And so we felt a major peace from the Lord at that point, because the
what
Lord,
provision?
That's just mind-boggling that the Lord would provide something like that. And so we went forward, with the IVF process, and it's a long process as well. And fast forward to the following year, so October of 2019. Excuse me. We found out that we were pregnant with our first baby, and then towards Christmas in December, we found out that it was a boy, and we decided to name him Judah. We had already kind of decided on our names, even before we were pregnant. You know, my wife, again, she'd already been planning. So we had already decided, we wanted our first boy to be named Judah, and so. At 15 weeks, we go in, we did the gender scan. They tell us it's a boy. But then after that scan, we went and talked with the doctor, and he said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that the tech we see some stuff on the ultrasound, but don't worry about it. It's probably nothing."
Oh, sure, I won't worry about it. Yeah, that's what
probably
nothing,
and most of the time this works itself out, so don't stress. And we were like, okay, Well, how do you not stress?
Right.
So we were, of course, stressed, but we were trying our best to just follow the doctor's orders, Yeah. And so, fast forward to 20 weeks. If you know anything about pregnancies, at 20 weeks they do the big anatomy scan. So it's a big, long ultrasound where they're looking at all the different, organs and all that stuff. And I'm by no means a doctor, but in the first 2 seconds of the ultrasound, I knew that something was wrong. It didn't look right. And at that appointment, they told us, we talked to a doctor on the phone in Little Rock at UAMS, and he told us that Judah had LUTO, which stands for lower urinary tract obstruction. And so what was happening is, babies in utero, they drink the amniotic fluid, and it goes back out, and they drink it again, and that helps their body develop, and they also breathe in the amniotic fluid, and that helps develop their lungs.
Crazy.
It's just wild.
Just the process of creating a human.
Yeah, and so he told us at that appointment at 20 weeks, he said, this is a terminal diagnosis. Your son will survive in the womb, but whenever he is born, if he makes it to full term, whenever he is born, he'll pass away soon after, simply because what was happening is he was drinking in the fluid, but was unable to let it out, and so all that fluid filled his abdomen until there was no fluid left. It was all inside of his abdomen, and then he said what that does is the fluid basically takes up the space in his abdomen, and it doesn't allow for the development of his lungs. On top of that, it's also, ultimately going to destroy his kidneys. And of course, we were like, well, we want a second opinion, and so we went to Little Rock to a different doctor, different procedure, and long story short, ultimately we're diagnosed with the same thing.
You guys even went to Boston or somewhere?
We went to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It was at that point after those appointments, they were like, now there are some, like there's like 5 hospitals in the country that can maybe do procedures to help this. They do it all the time and it works, a large majority of the time, And so we were like, okay, great. And they were like, but you have to apply and there's no guarantee you'd get in, all that stuff. We applied, and thankfully Philadelphia, which was the highest recommended one in the country, they accepted us and they called us and wanted us to come. And the Lord was faithful at that point, man. Friends and family and people from literally all across the world just jumped in to help and sent us to Philadelphia. And so we were in Philadelphia for about a week or so and did lots of tests and lots more scans and stuff like that. And ultimately at the end of that trip, they ended up saying the same thing. They were like, unfortunately, Judah's condition has progressed so far that his kidneys are showing signs of failure. And so his kidneys are already failing, and his lungs are unable to develop. And so they said, unfortunately, like this is it, And we just, through this whole process, we chose to walk by faith.
Yeah.
God will provide. God always has, and always will come through. And so we just walked by faith saying, man, God's just going to come through and we're just going to see a miracle, And so even after Philadelphia, of course, and each one of these appointments are obviously devastating, Having faith doesn't mean that you also don't have feelings,
Right, yeah.
And so we were walking by faith, but obviously very aware of our feelings, And so after Philadelphia, we came home and we decided we were going to live life to the fullest, and we were going to live life in preparation for Judah to be here. And so we got his room ready. We put his bed together. We had baby showers. Like we were just fully believing that the Lord was going to heal him. And continue going to doctor's appointments and continued to hear the same things. No change, no improvement. And we were just like, it's okay. Like God's going to do it. We just believe. Today's going to be the day. Today's going to be the day. And then when Jordan was 30 weeks pregnant, she started having pains in the middle of the night, and finally woke me up and was like, hey, we're gonna need to go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital again, fully expecting them to be like, you shouldn't have come in, it's no big deal, and at that point they came in to check Jordan, and they said, you are fully dilated, fully effaced. You are actively giving birth.
So she was in a little bit of pain.
She was in pain, yeah. But Judah was breech. And so the doctor told us we have to do an emergency C-section. And of course, we're 30 weeks, which is very early. But even then, of course, we're terrified, but even then we're still full of faith.
Yeah.
Just this is the
This
day.
is when the miracle's gonna happen.
This is the day. We're gonna hear him cry. We're gonna hear him cry. Today is the day that we're gonna see God work. And so we're rushed into surgery, and ultimately the doctors, told us, hey, there's no activity with his lungs or anything like that. And so we were able to spend about an hour to an hour and a half with Judah before he passed away. And my faith was shook, because I fully believed God.
I did all the steps. Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I mean, I everything in Scripture. I did everything that, you should do,
Mm-hmm.
And God didn't come through in the way that I wanted him to.
Yeah.
My faith was shook. Our faith was shook for sure. But I thank the Lord, honestly, that it never got to a point to where we considered walking away from him. Well, I was upset with him.
Sure.
I think I was definitely upset with him, but I do thank the Lord that it never got to a point to where we were considering maybe we shouldn't follow this person.
Yeah.
Because I will say, we knew that's something that kind of the Lord revealed to me is and I think that's why the word says, and then you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And we quote that all the time, the truth will set you free. But really, it's not the truth that sets you free. It's the truth that you know that sets you free. And so when we were, obviously just distraught and discouraged and it was miserable, there was a truth that we knew. Mm-hmm. And the truth that we knew was that God is still good. He is still a healer. He does still love us. He does still have a plan for us. He doesn't want us to hurt. And the word that even says that he weeps. He's near the brokenhearted. Yeah. That he wept when Lazarus died. Yeah. And Jesus even knew what was about to happen, but Jesus took time. He took time to say, I'm gonna step into this full humanity and mourn the loss of my friend, and so to know that he's near the brokenhearted and that he has these feelings and all that, and he put these thoughts and feelings inside of us, but to also know that it doesn't define his character. Yeah. Our circumstances do not define God's character. And so we continue to trust the Lord. And it was a long, hard process, and it's still not over. I don't think you're ever done with grief. No. I think it's just a thing that you kind of learn to live with. You learn to live with grief. And so we walked that road, and we're still walking that road. But God has been faithful. Yeah. Beyond that, we were blown away at the amount of people that reached out to us, because we were very open about the whole process on social media and our story with Judah, and we were blown away at how the Lord used our story to impact people's lives. Tons of people contacted us to tell us, "Hey, I just want you to know, I stopped following the Lord years ago, but I've been following your story and your testament of faith and how you guys have continued to trust the Lord. I want you to know I'm coming back to Jesus because of that."
Wow. God turned the tragedy.
Yeah, for him. Obviously I want my son here. Yeah. But that kind of makes you say, okay, Judah's life wasn't wasted. Mm-hmm. He wasn't here long, but his life wasn't wasted, and his life is still having impact today. Yeah.
He helped lead more people to the Lord than some of us.
Absolutely. He absolutely did. And the Lord, like I said, the Lord's still using it. I'm hoping that the story today, will impact somebody and make them choose to trust God even when times aren't good.
Yeah.
That He is still good.
Yeah. Like
so,
what you said, Jesus wept and all
Yeah.
these things. Like, it's such a simple verse, but you think about, we live in a fallen world. Like, even there's just some reason, it's not us, we're not God, but for some reason bad things happen,
Yeah.
even to good people.
Yeah.
And Jesus knows it and allows some level of it
Yeah.
for some reason, and for His purpose in the end.
Yeah.
Even though we don't like it, even He didn't like it in His fleshly self, to the point that He wept.
Yeah.
And we just have to again remind ourselves, hey, that's not from Him.
Yeah.
But for some reason on this fallen world, before He comes back again, that things happen.
Yeah.
Sin happens. People kill other people.
Yep.
That's not in the will of God.
Yep.
So bad things happen, but Jesus is there, like you said, with us.
Yeah.
In the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
Just hugging you and saying, I'll weep with you.
Yeah.
I'll wait with you.
That was honestly like life-changing to us, was that realization. Because to be perfectly honest, like soon after his death, I hadn't turned my back on Jesus by any means, but I didn't really want to go to him.
Not happy either.
I didn't really want to turn to him at this time, because maybe as weird as it sounds, but if you've ever been there, like, I didn't want to turn to him because I didn't want him to fix it. You know what I mean? I didn't want him to make me better. I didn't want him to make me.
You didn't want to just move on like
I wanted
glimpse.
I wanted to mourn. Mm-hmm. As weird as that sounds, I wanted to think about and miss my son.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I assumed, that if I went to Jesus, He would help me get over it.
Yeah.
But we actually started counseling at that point, which I highly recommend counseling. Mm-hmm. Christian counseling, someone who knows the Word, loves the Word, and counsels according to the Word of God. But I was, just telling my counselor, because she was asking, she's like, how are you in Jesus, And I was like, I don't really want to go to him, I don't want to go to him because I don't want him to fix it. And the way that she described it to me is, she said, it's like you are in this pit of grief. You're in this deep pit of grief and despair. And all these other people connected to you are on the top, and they're looking at you down in this pit of grief.
Yeah, like helpless.
And they're telling you, oh, well, if you just, go through the steps of grief, you'll get out of this pit, Or if you were, just turn to Jesus, then you can get out of this pit. And she said, what they're doing is they're all trying to throw ropes down and help you get out, And that's not wrong, but you don't want that.
Yeah.
In that moment, you don't want that. You're just like, I just want to be here. Like, even though it's miserable, this is where I want to be. And she said, and we don't turn to Jesus because we think He's on the top too, trying to get us out. She said, but in reality, Jesus is in the pit with us. Mm-hmm. And He just wants to sit there with you in your pit and just hurt with you, and mourn with you and hold you and just say, it's going to be okay. It's not okay.
Right.
But it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so that was really, it revolutionized our life, because at that point I was like, okay, I can invite Jesus into that.
Yeah.
I don't want to invite Jesus to fix me quite yet, but I can invite Jesus into my pain.
Just be there with you.
To be there. And man, as soon as I opened up my heart to allow Jesus to fully step into my pain, man, it was incredible. And He's such a good God, because He didn't fix it right away, mm-hmm. He didn't just let me get over it, but there was such this overwhelming, like, it was almost as if I could feel the tangible embrace of Jesus, of just like, it's okay, I'm here. Mm-hmm. I'm here with you. And so it was my walk with Jesus changed truly through that process. Like, how I walk with Jesus today is different from how I walked before. Mm-hmm. And my level of trust in Him has changed. And yeah, like, continuing the story, like, Jesus was still faithful through all that, and we continued the IVF process after Judah.
What was that like, starting over that
Hard.
process again?
It was a hard thought process and have discussions of like, do we even want to keep doing this?
Yeah, am I opening myself up?
Yes.
That's the only thing I can think of. Is, are we about to go through it again?
Do it again,
yeah.
yes. And through lots of prayer and discussion with each other, we decided to continue. And the Lord blessed us with Darcy Joe in 2021. And she is perfect. She's healthy. She is 2 years old, and she is wild and crazy and hilarious.
What was that moment like?
Oh,
like
man, just the only other moment I had was with Judah, and holding him even while he was alive. It was such mixed feelings because it's my son, and so I'm overwhelmed with joy and pride, and excitement. But at the same time, I know that this time is short-lived. Yeah. So it was also miserable and heart-wrenching, and but with Darcy, on the other hand, it was a very new experience because it was like, she's okay, she's okay, and she's healthy, and she's going to be here, and I'm going to have to learn how to live life with a baby, and all that stuff, and so
eventually they turn into teenagers.
Yeah, yeah.
Just wait.
So now we have Darcy, and like I said, just 3 weeks ago now, we had Charlie Grace.
Yeah, your brand new papa again.
Yeah, and so two baby girls at home, and God is faithful.
Yeah,
God is faithful, and we haven't forgotten Judah. We haven't moved on from Judah or anything like that. He's still our son, and we still love him, and we still tell his story everywhere we go. And but we're. It's just like the word says. We don't weep like those who have no hope.
Yeah.
We don't mourn like those who have no hope, because we have a hope in heaven, and I know where my son is, and I know I'll see him again, and I find peace in that. And I find joy in that, that I know that I'm going to spend eternity with my son.
Yeah, you have a lot more time.
That's right. That's right.
Without him.
That's right. And so, Judah just must have been so good that Jesus couldn't give him up for very long, Yeah. So I know that, man, of all people in the world that I would choose Judah to be with, if it's not me and my wife, it would be Jesus.
Yeah.
And so he's in the best hands, and we're going to see him again.
Well, I think about it too. Like, my father passed away more than 10 years ago, and obviously you have family and stuff that are in heaven, and like they're hanging out with Judah too. Like, that's such a cool thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, be cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking about. I think it was in Uganda. It was like overlooking the Nile River where it starts, and watching the sunset. I was like, everybody thinks about heaven as like streets of gold. And like, I don't care about gold. Maybe it's because I'm poor. But I just don't think about gold and diamonds and all that, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think about the other side of heaven, like the nature, like the beauty, like just to be in awe of like where you're at. Like, that's like one of my favorite spots, just seeing the sunset and over the Nile River, and just like, this is so beautiful. Like, this is what heaven has to be like.
Yeah.
Just think about walking around and just beautiful nature everywhere God designed, created, like stuff that he implemented here on earth, just in heaven. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's going to be good. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Maybe a few more years, but.
Yeah.
But
I was actually just talking with some family members the other day, just saying, like, the only thing that's holding Jesus coming back is us.
Yeah.
Like, so we got to get out there.
To all have heard.
We got to go tell them all. And so if we want Jesus to come back, it's time we start doing something.
Yeah.
Telling people about him.
Let's get serious about the 1040 window.
That's right. Let's go. Let's just go do it.
And then, again, like what we've kind of looping back around to what you guys do, let's get serious about the ones that we can reach here.
Absolutely.
So that's the easiest. I'm a big proponent of, I was told people before, like, we got to go to all the world. Yeah. So right here, there's Fayetteville, Arkansas. We're right on the world map.
Yeah.
So let's go everywhere. Let's not forget about here.
Absolutely.
And all the people that are coming here.
Yeah.
From everywhere.
Yep.
Like, that's such a cool concept. And,
Yeah.
love what you guys do. And I think a lot of people, I don't know, maybe I haven't been paying enough attention, but I think with social media and you guys' story isn't as unique as we used to think it was.
Yeah.
It happens to a lot more people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the exact story of what happened, but loss and
Yep.
fertility issues. And
Yeah.
so I think it's so good to share that story and let other people know there's people, somebody's going to watch this and they've had a similar story and maybe questioning faith.
It's almost like what I feel like when you get a new car, you see that car everywhere now.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe either that or more people are becoming more vocal about it, because it's the same thing. Like once we started our infertility issues and stuff like that, like it seemed like more and more people were coming out, and I'm talking like not just people that we've heard of, like people we know, people we have a relationship with, and because we were so vocal and open about it, we believe the Lord has used that to be a part of a ministry.
Absolutely.
Because we've been able to minister and help other couples going through IVF process or any kind of infertility issues, adoption, foster care, all kinds of stuff like that. Like, and we don't even have, experience with that, but just because of our openness, I guess, through our issues, like the Lord's opened
you walk
doors.
through a path that only the other people that have been through it can understand.
Can truly understand, yeah. And I even kind of going, switching gears, kind of going back to what you said about, we need to go to the whole world, but we got to start here.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Jesus even said that right before he ascended, in Acts chapter 1, he said, I'm going to send you, I have to go so I can send the Holy Spirit. And when he comes, he'll give you power to be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost. Well, if you look at that on the map,
from where you are
exactly,
to everywhere else.
It's basically a target.
Yeah.
It looks like a target, like Jerusalem, the city, Judea, the extra area, Samaria, the extra area, and it just gets larger and larger and larger. It's like Jesus gave us a roadmap. Like he's like, this is how I want you to do it. Start here. And so I tell our students, and some like it and some don't like it, but I tell our students all the time, especially when they want to go on foreign mission trips with us. And I'm like, hey, man, like, I don't want to take you on foreign mission if you're not willing to do mission at home.
I know. It's got to be in your DNA.
That's right. Because if you're not going to do it here, you're not going to do it there.
Yep. And the situations may change, or you might be in a harder situation. Maybe maybe you're more tired. Maybe there's not electricity. Most of Europe doesn't believe in air conditioning, which we really love.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe you don't have air conditioning.
Yep.
Maybe you're. I've been several places in Africa, and we just meet under a tree.
Yeah.
And that's your church.
Yeah.
And I won't get on my soapbox there, but it's funny how people say, well, we don't need all this stuff for church. You don't need that light. To have church. No, you don't. You don't need air conditioning either. No, not many Americans mention that part.
Yeah.
You don't need air conditioning to have church.
No.
You don't need, I'm not going to get that soapbox, even though I sort of did a little bit. Point is, whatever you are inside, when you start getting squeezed, it's going to come out. So
that's right.
Get your DNA right. Yeah.
That's right.
Care about people and the mission here.
Yeah.
And then take it elsewhere. And then when you get squeezed, that's your DNA just going to come out. So
that's our goal, man. That's our goal. That's why we do what we do, is because we want to train up adults, adults that are going to be in the world making disciples. And, we have students that literally go across the world as missionaries. They do world missions. We have pastors, music directors, tons of students that come through our ministry that ultimately end up in full-time evangelical ministry.
Yeah.
But we also, which I think is just as important, we also have tons of students that the Lord sends them to the marketplace.
Yeah, they go out and be doctors and politicians.
Because where we need a missionary? Tyson. Mm-hmm. You know where we need a missionary? Walmart.
Yeah.
We need missionaries in the hospitals. We need missionaries on school boards. That's where we need missionaries, and the Lord's sending them. And that's why
that's how you change culture.
That's how you do it.
It's all
how
over.
are you going to change the world? Obviously, like the fivefold giftings, like Christ gave these gifts to the church. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But what does the word say that their role is? It says, Christ gave these gifts to the church: apostles, prophets, pastors, evangelists, teachers. Well, missionaries falls within that, right? Mm-hmm. What is their role? The word says their responsibility is to equip the church.
Yeah.
Equip the saints to do
Church
the work
being
of
the
the
people.
ministry.
Yep.
And so that means that, yes, I'm a missionary, and obviously I want to lead people to Jesus constantly. That's like, ultimately, I want to be adding people to the kingdom.
Yeah.
But my first and foremost job that I believe God has called me to do is to equip others to do the work of the ministry. And so to be able to train students, introduce them to Jesus, and then train them to go and make disciples wherever they find themselves, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the uttermost, then I've done my job as a missionary.
Yeah.
And so training, discipling, disciple makers, I think that's what God's called us all to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you guys are doing on U of A campus, and love supporting you guys however I can, and hopefully people will watch this and support you guys. And
yeah, that'd be great.
And yeah, I just appreciate
we
you.
We would welcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to Justin. We'll put some info on this video so people can get all of you. But thanks for stopping by today and sharing your story and what you guys are doing and being a part of this crazy new podcast adventure.
Yeah, this is fun. This is fun.
Yeah,
I appreciate you inviting me for sure. This is really cool.
Thanks again for joining us on the Mission Field Media Podcast. We so appreciate you taking your time to watch and listen to what God is doing all around the world through these missionaries and ministries. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, find us on the social media apps and follow us there, and tell all your friends about it. We couldn't do this without the listeners like you guys and our sponsors. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to having you join us again on the Mission Field Media Podcast.